Steve Murillo is the State Section Director for the Los Angeles, California section of the Mutual UFO Network. We'll talk with Steve about LA UFO sightings and about MUFON LA's success at developing a real sense of community within its members. We'll also talk about China's search for extraterrestrial life, the potential for a real-life warp drive, and other space and UFO news right now on Spacing Out.
Greetings everyone and welcome to Spacing Out. I'm Jason McClellan.
And I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
Thanks for joining us today. We're looking forward to talking with Steve Murillo from MUFON LA about UFOs. But first, it's time to talk about what's in the news.
A man claims to have recorded footage of a fast-moving disc-shaped object descending and ascending above his house in Melbourne, Australia on Tuesday, September 11th.
The sighting took place at approximately 7 p.m., and although the witness claims he recorded 8 minutes of footage, he says the object was in the sky for more than an hour. This UFO is said to have changed colors, alternating between red, blue, and green. The witness described the maneuverability and agility of it was phenomenal.
According to Perth Now, skeptics claim the object may have been a remote-controlled toy plane, but the witness is firmly against that possibility. More UFO files were recently released by the Australian government. The latest batch of files comes from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, which examines near misses or unidentified objects that could interfere with safety.
The Herald Sun reports that burn marks on golf courses, silvery airborne objects, and white moving lights are among the more unusual sightings reported to the Australian Transport Safety Bureau.
This release of UFO files comes just 1 month after the National Archives of Australia released UFO files to the public, which detailed sightings from the 70s and the 80s. Southwestern United States residents were surprised by a colorful streak in the sky on Thursday, September 13th. Witnesses in Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, and California saw this formation at approximately 5:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Hundreds of viewers reportedly called or emailed ABC 15 in Phoenix, Arizona to report the oddity, but ABC 15 quickly reported that the anomaly in the sky was a contrail for missile tests at the White Sands, New Mexico missile complex.
As Space.com explains, the brilliant streak in the sky was created by the launch of an Army Juno missile early Thursday from Fort Wingate in New Mexico, which soared high into the atmosphere on its way to the White Sands missile range to be intercepted by a Patriot missile. The unarmed Juno rocket flew so high that its long contrail reflected sunlight from the yet-to-rise sun, sparking a dazzling night sky light show.
This contrail generated widespread inquiry across the Southwest. According to the Associated Press, a New Mexico deputy in San Juan County stated, "We have gotten reports that there was an explosion or a UFO or a missile or whatever, and people thought it was real close, so they were concerned there would be debris falling from the sky." A White Sands Missile Range spokeswoman told Space.com that her office received more than 100 calls and a flood of emails from observers who saw the Juno rocket's contrail from the states across the Southwest. You may remember that back in early 2012, the BBC reported that news of extraterrestrial contact may initially reach most people through Twitter because of Twitter's ability to provide instant news to users around the world. Seems like a reasonable assumption to me. But although Twitter may very well be the source of which many initially learn of extraterrestrial contact, it could also incite hysteria.
A recent Forbes article suggests that Twitter will cause our generation's War of the Worlds. The Orson Welles 1938 radio drama panicked listeners who thought the fictitious alien invasion was real. And due to the faith of the people have in the reliability of social media, Forbes theorizes that Twitter users may react in a similar manner to news of extraterrestrial visitation, real or fictitious.
The article explains, with the power of mass communication in the hands of everyone, a War of the Worlds scare can't be far away and would be easier to pull off today than it was for Orson Welles. So, in the event of true extraterrestrial contact, the news will disseminate rapidly via Twitter, but false news can spread equally as fast, which can make it difficult to distinguish genuine news from false news.
China has rapidly emerged as a major player in the new space race. China's first astronaut launched into space only 9 years ago, but since then, the country's space program has progressed rapidly.
In late 2011, the country launched its own space station, the Tiangong-1, and in June 2012, the manned Shenzhou 9 mission successfully docked with the space station. With plans for manned missions to the moon and to Mars, the country's space exploration plans are accelerating at an incredible pace.
China's vice president recently spoke at the General Assembly of the International Astronomical Union in Beijing. According to China Daily, he made it clear that China was determined to be not only a world leader, but a pioneer in intergalactic affairs too. Professor Sung Kwok, the University of Hong Kong's Dean of Science, believes that the vice president's words and his presence at the assembly indicate that space exploration is a national priority.
At the assembly, Kwok was elected vice president of the International Astronomical Union, the IAU's, Bioastronomy Commission 51 for the next 3 years. You heard right, that's Commission 51. And is anyone else suspecting an intentional Area 51 allusion here? Possibly. This commission is a dedicated body of scientists searching for extraterrestrial life, and it was established all the way back in 1982. Bioastronomy is now more commonly referred to as astrobiology.
Kwok believes that evidence of extraterrestrial life will be discovered within the next 50 years, but perhaps as soon as 20 years. And although he expects to discover microbial life, he firmly believes that intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe, and also believes that a lot of scientists also hold the opinion that there is intelligent life out there.
A real-life Star Trek warp drive would sure make space travel a lot easier. Although a warp drive might seem like something only possible in some futuristic sci-fi world, its reality might be closer than you'd expect.
Dr. Harold Sonny White, the Advanced Propulsion Theme Lead for the NASA Engineering Directorate, stated on Friday, September 14th that perhaps a Star Trek experience within our lifetime is not such a remote possibility. And as Gizmodo explains, Dr. White and his colleagues don't just believe that a real-life warp drive is theoretically possible. They've already started the work to create one.
Speaking at the 100-Year Starship Symposium, Dr. White explained that loopholes in the laws of physics indicate that warping the space-time fabric is possible. According to Space.com, a warp drive concept was proposed in 1994 by Mexican physicist Miguel Alcubierre, but calculations determined that his warp drive would require too much energy. But after adjusting the equations, physicists believed the design could be changed enough to enable it to run on significantly less energy.
Space.com describes an Alcubierre warp drive would involve a football-shaped spacecraft attached to a large ring encircling it. This ring, potentially made of exotic matter, would cause space-time to warp around the starship, creating a region of contracted space in front of it and expanded space behind.
This original warp drive design would require a minimum amount of energy about equal to the mass energy of the planet Jupiter, says Space.com, but White proposes adjusting the shape of the ring encircling the spacecraft into more of a round donut as opposed to a flat ring. And by doing so, the warp drive could be powered by a mass about the size of a spacecraft like NASA's Voyager 1.
So that's all the stuff that was going on in the news this week. And Jason, I'm really curious to hear what you think about this new Melbourne UFO disc footage.
You know, it's an interesting UFO. There's not much to see because the gentleman who supposedly took this footage of the UFO only supplied like 5 still images of his footage to select media outlets. And it's difficult to make out much from it. It's kind of blurry. It looks like it could potentially be a light reflection from inside. And like the story said, you know, skeptics think it could be you know, like a remote-controlled helicopter or something. But red flags went up for me right away because this guy is supposedly, at least he claims, is in talks with television networks to sell his footage.
Oh, and no.
Yeah, that's bad news. When people try to sell
Right.
UFO footage, that sends up flags that it's most likely fake, hoaxed.
Okay, yeah, let's not put a lot of weight on that one.
So yeah, I'm not, you know, I don't know because I haven't seen the footage myself. I've just seen the still images that were provided. But gotta say, selling the footage is red flags for me. So that's what I think, Maureen, and I'm curious to hear what you think about, we're talking about Twitter again, and talking about extraterrestrial life. It's kind of weird, but we seem to talk about Twitter a lot. You know, there's been a lot of beaming messages into space and things like that. But now talking about the news of extraterrestrial contact coming through Twitter.
Well, honestly, I don't think that this is a surprising way to launch news. I mean, we hear of a lot of news first on Twitter. I mean, that's where Michael Jackson's death was first reported, before major news outlets, and all these other things. Do I think it's going to cause a mass hysteria? No, I do not. And I mean, people know not to trust everything they see on social media at face value. Just last week, Morgan Freeman was announced dead, and clearly
That's right.
he is alive.
That's right.
But so I think people are smarter enough now, I shouldn't say smarter, but if you heard news of an extraterrestrial invasion over Twitter, and what would you do? First, you would probably Google it immediately afterwards to see if news outlets, supporting evidence. You're not going to immediately assume the worst and hide under your desk. Back then, they only had radios, and that was their primary source of news. So they took it at face value.
That's a very good point, and I think you and I both agree that contrary to what they said in the Forbes article about this, I strongly disagree that it would be easier to pull off a War of the Worlds type situation now than it was back then.
Well, and I think people aren't as surprised by the idea that extraterrestrial life could be visiting us here as well now. And you know, that they are trying to say that we would be so shocked and surprised. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, and you also have a good percentage of the population who already strongly believes that extraterrestrials are here on Earth. Right. So you're not going to surprise them. And
then on the other hand, you have the proponents, a lot of astrophysicists who say that it is not possible to travel faster than the speed of light, but woe and behold, news this week about the Star Trek warp drive.
Awesome.
This was the coolest thing I heard this week.
Awesome.
But that this has been studied since 1994, but now we're finding it's possible to do with less energy, which could mean a lot for the future.
It means so much for space exploration, for space travel. And people write this stuff off, you know, saying that, oh, physics says it's not possible. There's no way that we can go faster than the speed of light. But again, I don't know why some scientists have such a hard time understanding the concept of, okay, we know this now, but everything can change. We'll learn new things. Right. What, you know, the technology we have is going to change. Our understanding of physics and the way the universe works is going to change. And we're seeing that now. You know, you might not be able to technically go faster than the speed of light, but you know, by adjusting equations and coming up with ways to sort of get around the laws of physics, things are possible.
Right, and even in this one, they stated that, I liked the example of that Gliese 581G, which is supposed to be one of our super Earths, kind of, so to speak, is 20 light years away, that we'd be able, in this technology, to get there in just 2 years. So, if they can master
brings it into the realm of possibility.
Exactly.
You know, it's reachable, and this is technology that they're working on now, in theory, but still it's a possibility, and I think we're closer to actually achieving the sort of Star Trek world in our lifetimes than we thought would be possible.
Right, so that's some exciting stuff in the news this week. Now let's talk about UFOs in Los Angeles with MUFON LA State Section Director Steve Murillo.
Steve, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. We're excited to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
So, Steve, you are the State Section Director for MUFON LA, the Mutual UFO Network. How did you get involved with the organization, and how long have you been involved with them?
I've been involved with MUFON since 2000, and what got me involved was a sighting directly over my head in Manhattan Beach, California. It was a formation of 5 objects. They looked nothing like flying saucers. They looked more triangular, although they weren't. Each one was not perfect triangle. It was, if you took 3 triangles and put them together at the base, each one of these objects looked that way. Each object was light. In other words, there weren't little pinpoint lights on these objects. Each object was light, very coherent, kind of a white with a slight yellow tinge to it. These things flew directly from the ocean right over my head and then due east. When they got over my head, I thought they were seagulls coming in off the water, and then this is at night, about 9:30 at night. So here I'm sitting on my rooftop deck looking out towards the ocean. These things are coming at me, and I'm thinking, here comes some seagulls. And I'm thinking, well, why would somebody be shining lights on seagulls? And then they're coming towards me more, they're getting bigger, and as they're going over my head, I see the shape of these things, and being an ex-military pilot, I know they're nothing like any kind of aircraft I've ever seen. They fly directly over my head, as I said. I followed them with my eyes, and when they got a quarter mile behind me, 3 of them split off. They were flying in a delta-shaped formation, or like, you know, lead and then 2 on each end, or I guess what you call an echelon. 3 of them split off, and they didn't yank and bank like a normal jet would do. They split off, slid across the sky, as I like to describe it, and then they flew out for a couple seconds, maybe 2 seconds or 3, and then the 2 that were left behind, so to speak, slid directly across the sky. Now they're maybe moving a mile across the sky in just a matter of a half a second or so, and then got exactly back into formation, and then they were gone.
Wow.
And I jumped out of my hot tub all excited. I'd never seen anything like this. And ran downstairs and was yelling at my wife. I jumped on the internet. I found MUFON LA and started going to their meetings. And then about a year later became the head of MUFON LA. And I've been doing that ever since. So from 2001 or so, I've been the state section director. And my job is to make sure that we investigate the various sightings that are filed in Los Angeles. And we get them now, I'd say 2 to 3 times a week. We get, my section does, that's not including Orange County, Ventura, or San Diego, or Riverside. And so I think probably with those combined sections, there are at least 2 sightings a day that are filed. Some are just basic planets, you know, stars, that sort of thing, aircraft. But then some are legit sightings, and our job is to kind of suss out which ones are legit, which ones are worth chasing, which ones were, you know, the planet Venus, and that's what we do.
LA seems to be pretty active in terms of sighting reports, and you know, this isn't a recent occurrence. I mean, UFOs have been frequent in LA for quite some time, even back to really the beginning of the modern day UFO phenomenon. I mean, back 1947 was the well-known Battle of Los Angeles.
Right, right. Yeah, and that sighting lasted for hours. You know, I think it started, what, about, was it 2 o'clock or was it 12? The object basically floated across the sky, and people could see it from where I am right now in Manhattan Beach. People could see the object. In fact, a gentleman came to speak to MUFON LA who was living in Hermosa Beach, which is the next town down. He lived on the Strand with his family. The Strand is the beach, basically, little houses on the beach. And this thing flew basically over his head, or was large enough to appear like it was flying over his head. And then cruised on over Torrance, continued on down past through Long Beach, down, you know, some witnesses report as far as Orange County, which wasn't really exactly Orange County at the time, and then came back, turned around, went back. Meanwhile, artillery, we were all well positioned for the Japanese to attack at any moment, so we had artillery batteries all up and down the coast, opened fire on this thing, and something like, I think it was either 1,000 or 4,000 shells were unloaded on this thing, exploding all around it, direct hits, never changed its path, never changed its speed. People said it was going around 20 to 30 miles per hour, very slow. So it was either a military aircraft of some type that we didn't know about. Our armed forces didn't know about it. And if it was something like that, it indicated that it was impervious to shells. We're not talking about bullets, we're talking about artillery shells. Mm-hmm. You know, it was either that or something not from exactly this planet.
It's crazy. So, well, besides all these awesome historical cases that have happened in LA, have there been any recent cases that you've been working on that have stood out to you, or that are really interesting?
I had an interesting case a couple 4th of Julys ago. There was a bunch of people, there were a bunch of people in different locations in Los Angeles that videoed this object. Got really clear video of it. And this thing, I mean, there were people out, it was 4th of July at around 5 p.m. So there were a lot of people out on their lawns doing the sparklers and, you know, all that stuff, the fireworks. And everybody has video cameras, they're, you know, filming their kids and all that, having fun. And that's exactly what happened. I forget the town, it was just south of, it was around Glendale area. Gal was filming her kids, and all of a sudden they see this object, and the camera pans up, and they're filming this thing, and they're making comments on it. Everybody's observing it. You hear people in the background reacting to it, and the film was such that this object, you got a really good shot of it. It's blackish looking, dome on the top, kind of flattish on the bottom, and sort of like these blinky little lights on it, and it's moving. And you're thinking, okay, that could be a hoax. It could be some sort of balloon camouflaged as a UFO, made to look like a UFO, and then little you know, props on an RC craft, basically. It could be an RC, you know, radio-controlled craft that somebody's just goofing around with. And that would be fine, except 40 miles up, kind of northwest, just a few minutes later, maybe about 5 minutes later, another lady filmed it, And so to move 40 miles in that short period of time, the thing would have to be moving extremely fast, or the hoaxer would have had to got in a car and race down the freeway at incredible speeds to get there and then throw the thing up in the air. In other words, and by the way, the second film, they filmed it until it went out of sight, meaning it became so small that you couldn't see it anymore. Now, again, it could be a hoax, but it would have to be in a very elaborate hoax and for no good reason. The hoaxer would have had to be willing to just let his RC stuff go, and in other words, just let it take off into the sky and be done with it and lose all that money on radio-controlled aircraft. So my best estimation was something real.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff in the sky there in LA, you know, and a lot of it can be identified. But I mean, I spend a lot of time there, and I see things in the sky all the time. It seems like the sky is pretty congested at times with things that you wouldn't see other places. I mean, there are blimps and helicopters all over the place. And then a couple of years ago, there was a sighting of lights in the sky that got a lot of attention from national media, and it ended up being the Red Bull Air Force, right?
Oh, right.
The
Yeah,
Red Bull skydrivers in Santa Monica with the flares on their feet.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of celebrities twittered that, and yeah, and you know, you can understand how people can mistake something like that for a UFO if they've never seen anything like that before.
Well, I think the most frustrating thing about that sighting was the wonderful Bill Nye the Science Guy went on, I think, NBC there and was saying that it was a hoaxed video, that somebody had taken, what, sea monkeys?
Sea monkeys, yeah.
Sea monkeys, and faked this video, and they were sea monkeys. On good old Bill Nye the Science Guy.
About as far from science as you can get, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love the guy. Anyway, you know, he's just a comedian, basically. He's more of a commentator. He's not, I don't treat that guy seriously at all. Unfortunately, some people do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, those sorts of incidents can definitely muddy the waters and cause confusion in the, you know, in ufology. It's unfortunate, but that's always what the critics and skeptics like to jump on as the thing that explains it all. And giving the volumes of information that we come across and deal with daily, and then not to mention the volumes and volumes of information that have been collected over the years since approximately 1942. That's just the current information. There's plenty beyond that or older than that. You know, given all that, you know, if any skeptic decided to take a serious look at it, they'd be overwhelmed.
I'm actually really impressed with your section of MUFON LA. It seems like you guys have one of the most active groups, as well as having a lot of younger people involved as well down there. And that's very impressive because that's always hard to get happening. But also, your sense of community there is so big. You guys just hosted a fundraiser for Dr. Roger Leir. Was it July 21st?
Yeah, it was. Very good memory.
Yeah, and so what is sort of, how did that go, and what brings you guys so good? How do you bring young people in? And
we have, you know, we've had a database of, when I got into MUFON LA, they had a database of about 1,000 names and phone numbers and addresses. But, you know, at the time, email was not as prevalent, so a lot of stuff was old. Anyway, over the years, we've been able to cull that list and create, you know, and nurture the community that we have. Meetup was a big boon for us too. We use a Meetup site to communicate with our membership base, you know, periodically. It's not every day. It's just like whenever it sends out automatic reminders. So that creates a sense of community where people can come. The Lear event went very well. Whitley Strieber actually was the guy who was the brainchild of that, and basically the idea was pull a bunch of people in a room, make some money, and then give it to Dr. Lear to help him with his medical bills. He's come across some health problems recently. And so, yeah, you're right. We have a lot of well-known ufologists in this local area. You know, Whitley Strieber, Roger Leir, you know, Stephen Bassett, Yvonne Smith, and Abduction. You know, list goes on and on. Preston Dennett. Anyway, so that creates a good sense of community, and we have those folks come in on a monthly basis. We get together on the third Tuesday of every month, and you know, we have anywhere from 75 to 120 people come to our meetings. You're right, we do have and encourage younger people to be involved in the field, and I think a lot of our board members are younger. And you know, people kind of think of MUFON as this old hat kind of thing, and we try to keep it fresh and new and encourage our members to be interactive with us, and I think it's worked out so far.
I think, yeah, Maurice said it. I think MUFON LA has done a great job, and I think it's a good model for other chapters of MUFON around the country. You guys have done a great job. And for people in the area who are interested, Steve, is there a website that you guys have where people can go for more information?
Yeah, you can go to MUFONLA.com, or you can go to Meetup and then just Google or search for MUFON LA, and you'll come across our Meetup site. And you can sign up for free, and then you just get our monthly notices for meetings, and then for notices for other meetings in the local area that aren't necessarily ours. For example, Dr. Stephen Greer is going to be speaking in a week over on Sunday in Santa Monica. So I put that up yesterday, and I think I've gotten already 30 responses that people are going to attend that. Our database right now is about 434 members just on the Meetup site, and then we have another database of emailers that we use, and that's another 1,000 people or so. So yeah, we have a good reach, but again, we're trying to create that cohesive community feeling when people come to the meetings. It's a little bit more friendly and open, and you're made to feel welcome.
Well, I think you're doing a good job with that, and you've accomplished a lot so far. So good luck continuing that. And Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Oh, you're welcome, Jason Marie. It was a pleasure, and you guys have a great day.
All right,
you
you
too.
too,
Take
Steve.
care.
Take care. That's all for this episode of Spacing Out. Be sure to visit openminds.tv for all the latest news. And join us again next week for our Military Men and UFOs special. Maureen and I are headed to Las Vegas today for the special lecture taking place on Saturday, September 22nd at the National Atomic Testing Museum, where former military personnel will speak about UFOs. Although the event is titled Military UFOs Secrets Revealed, we're not expecting any secrets to really come out, but it should still be a good lecture. We'll be there to cover the event, and we'll report back to you next week.
Remember, if you liked today's episode, make sure to like it on YouTube and leave us your comments. I'm Maureen Ellsbury.
And I'm Jason McClellan. We will see you in the future.